In this video, I'm going to show you how to paint Ultramarine Space Marine for you and for Macragge. If you want to get your minis painted and on the table looking great in no time at all, then please consider subscribing. Okay, with the Ultramarines, we've gone for Zenithal Prime again. Now you can see it's basically black with a really light just dusting of white over the top. And if you compare that to this model that I'm going to be using for a White Scars tutorial, which is Corax White, you can see the difference in Prime on them. So I'll put a card up for the tutorial for the White Scar guy. In the meantime, we're going to get started with the Ultramarine. So we're going to start where all good Ultramarines start, and that's with the armour. So this is Macragge Blue, and we're basically just going to base coat the model with Macragge Blue. Now, Macragge Blue is quite a thick paint, so I've probably put about 1-to-1 paint and water to get a nice smooth coat. Don't worry too much if you end up going over the chest eagle, that's not too much of an issue. We're just going to paint all the way through. Now we're going to do this guy as a sergeant, so I'm going to leave the head as it is, because we'll do that helmet red. So I'm just going to work my way around painting all the bits of armour with the Macragge Blue. And what you'll see is that Zenithal Prime will really lend itself to give him some nice shadow. So I'll carry on working around and getting the base coat done on the armour, and we'll come back and have a look at the next step. Once that first layer of Macragge Blue is down and it's all nice and base coated, just going to take some Abaddon Black and we're going to go blocking all things like the piping here. So take your time. It doesn't matter if you do go onto the Macragge Blue too much, because we can go back and tidy up after. See, I've gone onto it there. But just work your way around the model. Pop this Abaddon Black in over all the ribbed areas. We'll do the holster as well, and the belt. So this Abaddon Black, I've not watered it down, I've just popped it onto the wet palette, so it's pulled some moisture through, which has thinned it nicely for me. I will have to go back in and do another coat of it. Just going to work around there on that. I'm also going to get the gun casing done. So that's nice and straightforward. We're just going to paint over the gun casing. In fact, paint the whole gun so that we get a decent base for the metallics we're going to put on there. So take your time, work your way around. I'll go ahead and finish the rest of this off cam, and then when I come back we'll have a little look at getting that blue armour shaded and highlighted, and I'll go and I'll fix that mistake I made as well. Once we've got the black done, like you see, I've gone in, I've done some corrections in there, I've painted the weapon, I've worked my way around, I've done all the kind of soft leather as well. I've also left this knee pad here light. I'm going to put that, keep that white and put a decal on there. So to shade the recesses of the armour, I'm going to use Leviadon Blue contrast paint. I'm going to mix it about 50-50 with contrast medium. And then I'm just going to take my time and work it round into the recesses. So this is a fairly quick way. You could use Nuln Oil for this. You could use Drakenhof Nightshade, but I prefer the contrast paint because once it gets onto the model, the contrast medium will start to pull it away from the raised areas, which just means that the cleanup is a lot less, and you get a nice dark line on there as well. So just work your way around the model, going into all the recesses. You can just throw a bit more into these deeper areas. It'll also give you a nice transition into some shading. if you want that around these armour plates. This is all about being patient. Now I'm using a size 00 brush from Winsor & Newton. I'll put a link to it in the comments. You may have noticed as well that I've actually swapped back to Winsor & Newton brushes from Artis Opus. I just find the Winsor & Newtons last longer. They keep their shape better. So even with, you know, the normal brush care of using brush soap, I just think the Winsor & Newtons, for me at least, last that bit longer. It might be different for you. I've got quite hard water where I work as well, where I live, so that's also a factor, but ultimately it's up to you which brush you choose. So I'm just going to go away and finish all these recesses. We'll come back and we'll have a look at highlighting the blue armour. So I've finished the Leviadon Blue shading, and there's a few areas where I've had to go back in and just tidy it up a little bit. So I've done that with Macragge Blue. So we're on to the first highlight. So the colour we're using for the first highlight is Calgar Blue. And where possible, we just want to use the shape of the model like that to do the highlight. The same for this knee here. So that's nice and straightforward. We've got some edges here, so we're just going to work the brush down those edges. So we've got across there like that. Again, don't be afraid to move the model about a little bit. One of the keys to doing good edge highlights is not to have too much paint on your brush. So if you've got too much paint on your brush, then it'll end up spilling and the highlight will be perhaps too thick, like I've just done there, because my angle's not straight enough. So how do we fix that? Well, I'm just going to get some Macragge Blue and paint over it. Straightforward like that. So we let that dry. We'll go and highlight some other areas. So let's have a look at, we've got the arm here, so let's have a look at we'll just pop a little highlight there. And then down the middle, we can just draw the brush down gently. And again, this is a take your time moment, because this is what's going to make the model really, really pop. Okay, so I'm going to go around, I'll do some more edge highlighting and hopefully get most of it done. One area it's worth looking at actually is the shoulder pads. So what we've got is we've got that dark line just there. So when it comes to the edge highlight, just going to gently pull the brush down. You can see I've done quite a bit of the edge highlighting now, but it's not quite finished. I just wanted to come down and do a little bit more so you can see how I do it and obviously learn yourself. So if we look at the back leg here, we're just going to move it along that edge and then we're going to draw the brush down there. Don't worry if it looks a little bit too thick. When it dries, it'll actually blend in with the Macragge Blue underneath. You see that I rubbed that bit of paint off with my fat man hands. So just carry on working around it. When it comes to these lines here, then just brace yourself against it and just move the brush through it. Now, someone made a comment on one of my previous videos. It seems that the paint stays wet on my brush for ages, and I've got plenty. I don't have to keep going back. And literally, it's just using a wet palette. There's nothing special about it. There's no magic. Just use a wet palette, and I'm just using the tip of the brush there just to work around this part of the leg. So the highlight will be a little thick. That's okay. We're going to use another colour just to sharpen up the edges a little bit. So I just wanted to do a little bit more so you can see how I work it around the legs. And the other thing as well, I don't do every edge, because not every edge is actually going to catch the light. When it comes to the foot, I just like to paint a U to mimic the shape there. So that's most of the highlighting done. I've just got the rest of that leg and the backpack to do, so I'll go away and finish that and we'll come back and put the next sharp highlight on there. You can see there that the highlights are coming out quite well, and it's giving some nice differentiation across the different parts. So the last kind of extreme highlight is Fenrisian Grey, and again we're on the 00, but with this one we're just going for the sharpest edges that are going to catch the most light. So just around there like that, and again we're relying on the shape of the model. We're not throwing paint onto it. Just take our time. Make sure you haven't got too much paint on your brush. We're just moving this to the extreme edges, and this will give you a nice sharp looking power armour. That just transitions nicely through those brighter edge highlights. You don't have a ridiculous Tron looking Space Marine on your hands. So just take your time and work your way around slowly. In some areas you're literally just going to put a little dot like that, like along these fingers here, you're going to have a little dot on the end, and that's a really nice highlight that we've got along there. We might have a little look just this corner. Now, I'm kind of glad I put that on too thick and made that mistake. And the reason for that, it gives me an opportunity to show you how to fix wonky edge highlighting. What we're going to do is we're going to take that base colour of Macragge Blue and just paint over it and tidy it up. How easy is that? So once we've painted over it and tidied it up, we can just go back and reapply it. And this is the same for any highlight where you may accidentally put it on a little too thick. You can always go back with your base colour and repair it. So I'm just going to work my way around the model, picking out those extreme edges, and we'll come back and have a look at the blue armour now that it'll be finished. I'm really happy with how all the armour's turned up. So let's go and do the gold next. So we're using Retributor Armour. We're just going to base all the gold areas with this. So just take your time, work it on. As always, be careful around the areas you've already painted. You may need to do 2 thin coats. I find that Retributor Armour is actually a really nice colour to paint. When you come to painting the shoulder pads, you can just run the brush along the edge like that to give you a nice gold covering. Little things not to forget, so we've got the skull on the helmet, Sergeant's helmet, so we just get that gold. It doesn't matter if you go too far wrong with that, and we'll just check the weapon, that's okay. So I'll go ahead and finish the rest of the gold, you can finish your gold too, and we'll come back, we'll shade it and then highlight it. So once the gold's done, all nice and shiny, we're just going to shade it with some Reikland Fleshshade. I don't personally like the gloss shades. If you like them and you want to use them, then that's great, but for me they're just a little bit too shiny, so that's really easy and straightforward there. Don't forget the skull on here. When it comes to the shoulder pads, we just want to leave some shade towards the bottom of these rims. And that's just to give us a little bit of colour difference when they dry. And we've got the bits on the shoulder pad around here as well, so let's get the shade over those. And we've got the nameplate here. So again, just shade the whole thing. Be careful not to get it all over the blue armour we've already finished like I just did. So all I'm going to do is wipe that off my brush and then just move it away, and that'll be fine. So there we are, let that dry and we'll come back and highlight it. Highlighting the gold is really easy and straightforward as well. So for this we're going back to the smaller brush and we're going to use Liberator Gold. Again, make sure you don't get too much on there. And where possible we're going to use the shape of the model to get that highlight on there. Might just move a little across the top there on the shiniest part. I'm just going to work it along that top level there. Pick out some extra shiny points. And also here as well. Just going to work it around. Now when it comes to the chest eagle, again, take your time. So we're going to put a nice highlight there, on there. And all we're going to do is we're just going to draw lines out, leaving the shade in the recess. Take your time. It doesn't get much easier than that. So that's the one side of it highlighted. And then the other way you can actually highlight it is you can just use the ridges and move the brush so it just catches those raised points. Now, if you find that you've put a little bit too much paint on, again, it's a really easy fix. Just take some of the Reikland Fleshshade and run it back over there, and that'll give you some of that definition. So we're just going to finish the gold highlights here, just on the skull there, on the corner, and I just want to flick some on that Aquila there. And that's the gold finished. Really easy, really straightforward. With the gold finished, let's move on to the metals. So we're going to base this with Leadbelcher. So we've got the buckle on the belt, it's quite a small one. We've got the handle on the bolt pistol there. We've got some of the poppers as well, keeps everything closed. We've got the exhausts on the backpack. And we've got all the metallics on the bolt rifle itself. So this is just a case of popping Leadbelcher all over the metallic bits. So I'll go ahead and finish that. We'll come back and we'll have a look at shading and highlighting the metal. Shading the metallics is again really straightforward. So with the metal we're just going to use Nuln Oil. We're just going to put it on there, move it around a bit. Be careful not to get it over the blue armour. And again, I'm using just the normal Nuln Oil. I'm not a fan of the gloss. So just work it all the way around. And to all the little nooks on the weapon. You can also do the vents as well. Pistol handle. So I'll just go and finish up, make sure I haven't missed anything, and we'll come back and highlight. To highlight the metal, I'm going to use chrome from Vallejo Model Air because it's my absolute favourite colour for highlighting metal. Now, I like to not worry too much about edge highlighting when it comes to this. So we'll do a little bit to catch there, but I do like to just give it an all-through highlight. All down there. And the same with the barrel just there, because the light will catch off all those areas, whereas down here it won't catch so much. So we'll just do the little edge in there, work it down into there, a little bit on the handle there, and then you can turn it over and you can do the same sort of thing there and just give it kind of like a nice area highlight. And I think that sometimes is more effective than just trying to do an edge highlight all the way through. When it comes to the back, yeah, you can just edge highlight. The exhaust is pretty straightforward, nice and easy. There's no need to edge highlight any of the other silver metallics, except maybe the tubes on the helmet. Just those upper bits that are going to catch the light. nice and simple. Okay, we'll just let that dry and we're going to start to think about the white knee pad next. So we're going to paint this knee pad here, and we're going to base that with Celestra Grey, so this should cover quite quickly and quite easily. Just be careful when you come up to the parts of blue armour we've already painted. Just take your time and work it in. One thing I say, when you use light colours like Celestra Grey, is don't be in a rush to paint over bits you've already done. And the reason for that, and yellow's a notorious colour for this, is that as the paint starts to dry, you run the risk of actually pulling away drying paint. So I'm going to let that dry a good little bit and then give it another coat, and if I do need to give it a third coat I will, but I'm just going to go back and make sure that I get this really, really smooth, because it's a real key part and a real key feature of the model, which really makes it pop. It took about 3 really thin coats just to get a nice smooth even coverage on the knee pad. So we're going in now and we're going to put Ultramarine Grey over it. I'm just going to work the Ultramarine Grey around. Again, this is probably going to need 2, maybe 3 coats just to cover. So just let that dry before you go in for the next coat, and I'll finish it off cam and we'll come back and we'll start the helmet. It took 2 coats of the Ultramarine Grey, and what I did was I put a third coat, but I just kept it around the outside just to give it a little bit more brightness from the shadow. So let's get the helmet done, and I'm just going to base this with Mephiston Red. So we're just going to pop that on. Just be really careful when you come to those bits you've already finished. And this is a nice, highly pigmented paint, so it should cover in just the 1 coat. So I'll have a look. We'll go ahead and finish that off cam, and when we come back we'll shade it and we will highlight it. So that Mephiston Red really did just cover in 1 coat, which is great. So we're going to shade the helmet now with Agrax Earthshade. So this is just going all over. I'm going to go over the helmet skull as well, and just get it all over the red and down the back. Just be careful not to get it on bits that you've already kind of gone over and highlighted. And make sure you get it into those vents on the helmet. So that's pretty straightforward, all done. So we'll just let that dry, and then we'll highlight the helmet, and the first highlight colour will be Mephiston Red. Once that wash is dry, let's just go back in with Mephiston Red just to pick up the highest points. We still want to leave that Agrax Earthshade in the recesses. So just take your brush and work these parts here so you can get that highlight, and similarly when you come around here then as well. So just leave that Agrax Earthshade, and be careful you don't accidentally go in and fill in one of those, or fill in some of the bits that you shaded. So when it comes to the, I guess, the snout of the helmet, the faceplate, then just take your time and all you're really doing is painting lines. So that's the first highlight. The next highlight, this is when we start edge highlighting, is going to be Wild Rider Red. And this is one of those classic colours, where, or classic examples I suppose, where you don't want to have too much on your brush. So we'll start with this part here. So just work it on. Again, you're just basically painting straight lines, and you can see there straight away it's giving a nice highlight on the top, but it's actually leaving some of the depth. So when it comes to this part of the helmet, we're just going to use the shape of the model just to pick up those highlights. And then similarly when it comes to the nose, just going to work our way down. Also around the eyes. And it's okay if this is a very chunky highlight, because we want to bring some attention to it. And then we've got where the helmet covers or connects there. So that's the first highlight, and the last highlight we're going to do for the red is Troll Slayer Orange. So this is just going to be on those sharpest edges. Just a little bit there. Work it down, and we don't want to go all the way when it comes to the faceplate. We just want to kind of take it halfway, so just take your time and work it on there. You see I've just actually made a bit of a mistake there, so I'm going to have to go back and fix that. It's easily done with some Agrax Earthshade. And you want to make sure that this line highlight is thinner than the Wild Rider red that's gone before. And then when it comes to this part here, again, use the shape of the model and a bit of an angle from your brush. Okay, so I'm going to go and fix that part of the faceplate I made a mistake on. That's the red done. So next up we'll do the strap on the bolt rifle, followed by the purity seal, the scroll work there, and also we've got the bit of cord, decorative cord there. For the leather strap on the bolt rifle, we're just going to go with a brown for the leather. So this is dryad bark. So you just move it around, take your time. It's probably my top tip for all kind of painting, really. Take your time, especially when you're going through traffic or places you've already painted. So let's just work it in there. Take your time just to cover the edges as well, that you're not painting over any of the blue or the bolt, the silver metallics that you've already done. So just work that up in there, and this is a base paint. I've not thinned it down with any water, I've just let the wet palette percolate through it, so it's giving it a little bit of thinning, but not too much. So we'll let that dry, and while that dries we'll go in and we'll base the purity seal. So for that we're going to use Carrick Stone. Just going to work this on there. This covers quite well, quite nicely. Don't forget to do the back side of it as well, because you can see that through the legs. And we'll also use Carrick Stone to base the scroll work on the rifle. So to do this, I'm just going to do it as though I was edge highlighting, and I'm just going to let the shape of the scroll work pick up the Carrick Stone. So I'm going to go finish the Carrick Stone on there, let it dry, maybe give it another coat, and then we'll come back and have a look at shading those bits. So while we wait for the Carrick Stone to dry, I'm going to take Screamer Pink and actually paint the wax of the purity seal. I love Screamer Pink as a colour as well. And we're also going to do this decorative bit of rope, just running it over, making sure we're being really careful not to get it on any of the armour. So I'm going to finish this off camera because it's a little bit easier to get to when I'm not having to film it, and then we'll shade the whole lot. So the model's really starting to come together now. It's going to shade these areas, so all of it really with just Agrax Earthshade. Just get it into the scroll work as well, because it'll kind of pick up some of those areas. And also the Screamer pink bits. We'll just run the Agrax Earthshade over there, just to give some definition to the rope elements. So we'll let that dry and we'll come back and highlight everything back up. I'm going to highlight all these areas now. So first up, we're going to use Gothor Brown to highlight the leather strap, and this is a straightforward as just running the brush down the edge like we've been doing all day. Same here. Just taking your time when you get up into the areas you've already finished. For the purity seal, we're just going to use Carrick Stone again. I'm going to go overboard with this, but I'm just going to highlight those bits where the light will really catch. And for the scroll, again, Carrick Stone. Exactly how we painted the first part of it. We're just going to use the shape to highlight. And for the purity seal, we're going to take some of that Carrick Stone. We're going to mix in some of that Screamer pink. So we've got a nice lighter pink colour. It's probably mixed in about a 2-to-1 Carrick Stone to Screamer pink, and the reason for that is because the Screamer pink is really, really powerful. So for the wax, we're just going to dot it on like that, and then when that dries it'll kind of go back to a bit better. When it comes to the decorative rope, we're just going to highlight those top bits, just draw some lines down there, and similar for this part. So we're just going to get some more on the brush. We're just going to move these lines in direction of the moulding on the model, so you get a nice highlight. It's a bit of a dull highlight, but that's okay because it doesn't draw too much attention. So that's all those bits highlighted. We're going to move on to highlighting all the black pieces next. Now the black, again, real simple highlight. We're going to use Mechanicus Standard Grey. It's a really simple way to highlight black. You've just got to be careful, again, with anything, not to put too much on your brush. And yeah, so I haven't put any on my palette yet, which is why you're now looking at the head of a model listening to me wash a brush off. So Mechanicus Standard Grey, edge highlighting like we have with everything else. So let's not have too much on the brush. So we'll have a little look at some of the tubing. So just going to move some highlight in there. And also these parts, so they're going to kind of catch the light a little bit. We've got a canister here, so we might have a little, just a really thin highlight down there. We've got an edge on the holster, which we can just run the brush down. And then we've got some other areas where we can just get some edge highlights on the go, where you've got some just definition in there. Same for these parts. I'm not going to bother in there because that's in shadow anyway. Just take your time, use the shape to get it done. So the last bit of highlighting we'll do here is on the bolt rifle. So again, really key that we don't put too much paint on the brush. I'm just going to work that highlight around using the tip where we need to, but in the main what we want to do is just make sure that we're using the edge of the brush. So we've got that nice line running through there. We're just going to use the edge of the brush. So I'll finish the other side of the bolt rifle, and then we've just got the eyes and the lens on the bolt rifle to do, and we're done. So we're going to base coat the eyes with Caliban Green. Really important that you do take your time here. And don't get it on any of the red. And also we're going to do the lens as well. Just work your way around making sure that you've got Caliban Green covering everything. The next stage is to highlight that Caliban Green. And to do that, we're going to use Warpstone Glow first. And I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, so switch to the 00 brush. So for the lens, we just want to catch this side, and that's straightforward enough. For the eyes, we want to just paint in a line like that on both sides. It's nice and easy. The next highlight, we're going to take some white scar and some Warpstone Glow and mix that so that we've got a really nice bright light green. Let's just a little bit of white into the Warpstone Glow. So and this is just going to be a thin line like that, and just one here as well. So we've got that, and we're just going to put a little dot on the bolt rifle just on the outside there like that. And the last stage is to take some white scar, put a little dot, that's much more than a little dot, that's a little dot, so I need to go in and clear up quickly the mess I made that side. So again, I'm not hiding anything from you guys, I make mistakes all the time, it's really just important that we know how to fix them. So I'm just going to take some Mephiston Red and cover that there, and then some Caliban Green. Again, hardly any on the brush, just to run under the lens there. So that's that fixed. So those are the eyes done. I'm going to take a little bit of white scar, just very little bit of white scar, and just pop some on the knee pad just there, just a nice circle of white scar just to give a pop of a highlight. And there we are, this Ultramarine is done. So I'm going to finish off the base. So for the base it'll be Steel Legion Drab, Astro Granite Debris with some Athonian Camo Shade and a dry brush of a Shabty Bone probably. So this Ultramarine Sergeant is now finished, and he's looking pretty good for not too much of an effort. You can cut down some steps if you want to, such as the final highlight, but they do really make the model pop. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like it and leave a comment down below. If you've got any questions, I'll be really happy to answer. Now, if you would like to support the channel, there are some links in the description for Goblin Gaming, where you can get up to 20% off the new Space Marine range. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.